They told you that you feel too much, that you take things too personally, that you need to grow thicker skin. But what if the problem was never your sensitivity? What if what they call weakness is actually your most dangerous gift? Think about the last time someone said you were too sensitive. Were you really overreacting? Or did you see something they were desperately trying to hide? Did you feel the tension in the room that everyone else pretended wasn't there? Did you catch the micro-expression, the slight change in tone, the carefully chosen words that revealed more than they intended? You're not broken. You're not weak. You're perceptive, and that terrifies them. Because while others navigate the world through what's said, you navigate through what's hidden. While they hear words, you hear intentions. While they see smiles, you see masks. And in a world built on performance, on carefully constructed facades, on collective denial of uncomfortable truths, your ability to see through it all makes you dangerous. Karen Horney, the psychoanalyst who revolutionized our understanding of neurosis and authentic selfhood, spent her career studying why some people develop what she called radar for the unconscious. She discovered that those who grow up needing to predict unpredictable environments develop an almost supernatural ability to read what's unspoken. They become human lie detectors, not by choice, but by necessity. Their survival depended on knowing what others were really thinking, really feeling, really planning. This isn't about being an empath. This isn't about absorbing everyone's emotions. This is about having a nervous system so finely tuned that it picks up on frequencies others can't even detect. You're not imagining things. You're not making it up. You're seeing what's actually there. And that's exactly why they need you to believe you're the problem. Because here's what nobody wants to admit. Most of human society runs on agreed-upon blindness. We agree not to mention the affair everyone knows about. We agree not to discuss the addiction everyone can see. We agree not to name the dysfunction everyone feels. And you, with your inconvenient perception, you threaten the entire charade. Society has a vested interest in keeping you confused about your own perception. Think about it. If you trust what you see, what you feel, what you know in your bones to be true, you become ungovernable. You can't be gaslit. You can't be manipulated. You can't be convinced that up is down and wrong is right. So they start young. They tell children who see family dysfunction that they're being dramatic. They tell teenagers who sense social violence that they're being oversensitive. They tell adults who feel workplace toxicity that they're not being team players. The message is consistent. Your perception is the problem, not what you're perceiving. Melanie Klein, the pioneering psychoanalyst who mapped the infant psyche, discovered something disturbing about human development. She found that children who accurately perceive their parents' unconscious hostility, depression, or anxiety are often labeled as difficult or oversensitive. The child isn't wrong, they're inconveniently right. They're picking up on what the adults are desperately trying to hide, sometimes even from themselves. But here's where it gets darker. Klein observed that these perceptive children face an impossible choice: trust their perception and lose their parents' love, or doubt their perception and lose themselves. Most choose the second option. They learn to mistrust their own experience. They learn to see through others' eyes instead of their own. They become strangers to themselves, all because someone needed them to stop seeing so clearly. But some of us never fully surrender our perception. We carry it like a secret weapon, even as we're told it's a burden. We feel the shift in energy when someone's lying. We sense the predator behind the smile. We know when we're being played, even when we can't prove it. And this knowing, this deep, cellular knowing, is what they're really afraid of. Because perceptive people can't be controlled through the usual channels. You can't sell them stories they know are false. You can't make them participate in charades they see through. You can't recruit them into collective delusions they've already decoded. Your perception is a form of resistance, even when you don't mean it to be. The philosopher Martin Buber wrote about what he called imagining the real, the ability to sense the full reality of another person beyond their presentation. He believed this was the highest form of human relating, but he also understood why it's so rare. Most people don't want to be seen in their fullness. They want to be seen in their performance. And when you see past the performance to the person, you become dangerous to their entire constructed identity. Your nervous system is a sophisticated detection device. While others' systems are calibrated for comfort, yours is calibrated for truth. This isn't a choice you made. It's often born from necessity. Maybe you grew up in an environment where reading micro-expressions meant survival, where sensing mood shifts meant protection, where detecting danger before it arrived meant staying safe. Harry Stack Sullivan, the psychiatrist who revolutionized interpersonal psychoanalysis, coined the term parataxic distortion, but he also studied its opposite. He found that some people develop what he called syntaxic accuracy, an almost uncanny ability to perceive interpersonal reality without distortion. These people, often survivors of chaotic childhoods, learn to see through the fog of projection and fantasy that clouds most human interaction. You might not have faced extreme circumstances, but somewhere in your history, your system learned that missing subtle cues was dangerous. So it adapted. It became hypervigilant. It learned to read the spaces between words, the tensions between people, the storms brewing beneath calm surfaces. Your body became a finely tuned instrument for detecting deception, danger, and discord. What others call sensitivity is actually your system's brilliant adaptation to a world that required you to see more, feel more, know more than others needed to. You developed what Sullivan called the radar of the neglected child, the ability to scan for threats that others don't even register as existing. But here's what happens when you bring this level of perception into everyday life. You see the affairs before they happen. You feel the betrayals before they're revealed. You sense the lies before they're exposed. You know when someone's smiling at you while sharpening a knife behind their back. You pick up on the subtle power plays, the hidden agendas, the unspoken resentments that poison the air in every room you enter. And when you try to name what you see, when you try to point out the obvious dysfunction, the obvious deception, the obvious game being played, you're told you're imagining things. You're too sensitive. You're reading too much into it. You're making mountains out of molehills. You're creating problems where none exist. But then, weeks or months later, when everything you sensed comes to light, nobody remembers that you saw it coming. Nobody apologizes for calling you crazy. Nobody acknowledges that your sensitivity was actually accuracy. They just move on to the next gaslight, the next denial, the next attempt to convince you that your perception is the problem. There's an unspoken agreement in most social groups. We all pretend not to see what we see. We pretend the boss isn't a narcissist. We pretend the marriage isn't falling apart. We pretend the friend isn't spiraling. We pretend the system isn't broken. This pretending isn't just politeness, it's a survival strategy. Because once someone starts naming what everyone's seeing but not saying, the whole house of cards comes down. Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist and systems theorist who gave us the double-bind theory, understood that most families and organizations run on what he called agreements about agreements. Everyone agrees to agree that certain things aren't happening, even when they obviously are. The alcoholic parent isn't drunk, they're just tired. The abusive boss isn't cruel, they're just demanding excellence. The toxic relationship isn't destroying you, you're just going through a rough patch. These agreements create what Bateson called frames, invisible boundaries around what can and cannot be acknowledged. And you, with your perception, you constantly break these frames. You see past them. You feel through them. You know what's outside them. And this makes you a threat to the entire system's stability. You threaten them just by existing. Your face gives you away when someone's lying. Your body language shifts when you sense deception. Your energy changes when you're in the presence of manipulation. You can't help it. Your perception is involuntary. It's like trying not to see with your eyes open. And others feel it. They know you know. Even when you say nothing, your knowing changes the room. It creates what Bateson called meta-communication, communication about communication. Your presence communicates that you're aware of what's not being said. Your silence speaks volumes about what you're perceiving. Your energy broadcasts your understanding of the game being played. This is why they work so hard to make you doubt yourself. If they can convince you that your perception is wrong, that you're too sensitive, that you're imagining things, then they can continue their performance without disruption. They can keep their masks on. They can maintain their fictional realities. They can avoid the discomfort of being seen. The moment you name what you see, you force others to either acknowledge it or actively deny it. Either way, the comfortable unconsciousness is shattered. The agreed-upon blindness is broken. The collective trance is disrupted. And most people would rather destroy you than wake up from their sleep. If this content is making sense to you, if you're finally understanding why you felt crazy for seeing what others pretend not to see, subscribe to this channel. Because what we're uncovering here isn't just psychology. It's the hidden architecture of social control. The gaslighting of perceptive people is a systematic process. It starts with small invalidations. You're overthinking. You're being paranoid. That's not what happened. Each invalidation plants a seed of doubt. Over time, these seeds grow into a forest of confusion. You start questioning your own experience. You start second-guessing your instincts. You start believing that maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you are imagining things. Maybe everyone else is right, and you're wrong. Theodore Millon, the psychologist who revolutionized personality disorder research, identified a pattern he called perceptual invalidation syndrome. He found that people who grow up having their accurate perceptions consistently denied develop a fragmented sense of reality. They know what they know, but they don't trust what they know. They see what they see, but they doubt what they see. This is exactly what happens to perceptive people in relationships with narcissists, in toxic family systems, in dysfunctional workplaces. Your perception becomes the problem that needs to be fixed. Your clarity becomes the pathology that needs to be treated. Your truth becomes the lie that needs to be corrected. The gaslighter's strategy is brilliant in its simplicity. They don't need to convince you of their version of reality. They just need to make you doubt yours. They don't need you to believe their lies. They just need you to question your truth. They don't need to win the argument about what's real. They just need to exhaust you into submission. And slowly, systematically, you're trained to distrust the very gift that could save you. You learn to ignore your gut feelings. You learn to rationalize away your instincts. You learn to explain away what you perceive. You become an accomplice in your own blindness. But here's what they don't want you to know. Your doubt is their weapon, not yours. Every time you second-guess your perception, you hand them power. Every time you apologize for seeing what you see, you validate their version of reality. Every time you silence your truth to keep the peace, you become complicit in your own gaslighting. The moment you stop doubting your perception is the moment their game falls apart. Because without your participation in your own confusion, they have no power over your reality. They can deny, deflect, and distract all they want. But if you stand firm in what you know, their tactics become transparent. Their manipulation becomes obvious. Their gaslighting becomes visible for what it is. A desperate attempt to control someone whose perception threatens their false reality. Energy doesn't lie. It can't be disguised, manipulated, or performed. It simply is. And you, with your heightened perception, are a walking energy detector. You feel the hostility beneath the hospitality. You sense the agenda behind the kindness. You know when someone's energy doesn't match their words. This isn't magical thinking, it's physics. Alexander Lowen, the founder of bioenergetic analysis, spent decades studying how emotional states manifest in the body's energy field. He discovered that every emotion has a specific energetic signature that can be felt by those sensitive enough to perceive it. Fear contracts the field. Joy expands it. Deception creates distortion. Authenticity creates coherence. You walk into a room and immediately know who's dangerous. You meet someone new and instantly feel their hidden pain. You sit in a meeting and sense the unspoken power dynamics. You're not reading minds. You're reading energy fields. And this ability fundamentally disrupts social dynamics that depend on energetic dishonesty. Most social interactions are elaborate energy exchanges wrapped in words. People say one thing while broadcasting something entirely different energetically. They smile while radiating contempt. They offer help while emanating resentment. They express concern while vibrating with judgment. Most people participate in this energetic dishonesty unconsciously. They don't even know they're doing it. But you feel it. You feel the disconnect, the dissonance, the gap between what's being said and what's being transmitted. Your body registers the incongruence. Your nervous system alerts you to the deception. Your entire being knows something is off, even when you can't articulate exactly what it is. This is why being around fake people exhausts you. It's not just the mental effort of decoding their mixed signals. It's the energetic toll of being in a field of distortion. Your system has to work overtime to maintain its coherence in the presence of so much energetic dishonesty. You're constantly translating, constantly filtering, constantly protecting yourself from the energetic pollution. Lowen observed that people who can perceive these energy dynamics often become what he called energetic truth-tellers. Even without speaking, their presence reveals the energetic reality of a situation. They can't help but respond authentically to what they're actually perceiving, rather than to what's being presented. This makes them incredibly threatening to anyone whose power depends on energetic deception. When you trust your energetic perception, you become immune to certain forms of manipulation. You can't be seduced by words that don't match the energy behind them. You can't be fooled by performances that don't align with the performer's actual state. You can't be recruited into energetic dynamics that violate your system's knowing. There comes a moment in every perceptive person's life when something shifts. You stop apologizing for seeing clearly. You stop doubting your instincts. You stop pretending not to know what you know. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. It's the moment your inner and outer worlds finally match. Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, called this moment organismic self-regulation. When you stop overriding your organism's wisdom with your mind's conditioning. You stop telling yourself you shouldn't feel what you feel. You stop convincing yourself you don't know what you know. You stop betraying your perception to maintain false harmony. This liberation doesn't come without cost. You'll lose relationships with people who needed you to stay confused. You'll be excluded from groups that require collective blindness. You'll be labeled difficult, intense, too much. But here's what you gain: sovereignty over your own reality, peace in your own skin, the profound relief of no longer pretending not to know what you know. When you finally trust your perception, you stop being manipulatable. You can't be convinced that toxic is healthy. You can't be persuaded that abuse is love. You can't be gaslit into doubting your own experience. You become, in essence, free, and this freedom terrifies those who depend on your confusion. Because a perceptive person who trusts their perception is impossible to control. They see through the games. They feel through the masks. They know through the performance, and they can't be convinced otherwise. They become what Perls called self-supporting, no longer needing external validation for their internal knowing. This doesn't mean you're always right about everything. It doesn't mean your perception is infallible. It means you trust your ability to perceive, to adjust, to refine your understanding based on new information. You trust the process of your own knowing, even when that knowing is uncomfortable, inconvenient, or isolating. The liberation of the perceptive is not about becoming harsh or closed off. It's about becoming discerning. You learn to share your perception with those who can receive it, and to protect it from those who would weaponize it against you. You learn when to speak your truth and when to let your silence speak for you. You learn to honor your gift without needing others to validate it. You were never too sensitive. You were never too emotional. You were never too much. You were perceptive in a world that requires blindness. You were clear in a culture that demands confusion. You were awake in a society that insists on sleep. Your perception isn't a wound that needs healing. It's a gift that needs honoring. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness that needs strengthening. It's a superpower that needs claiming. Your knowing isn't a problem that needs solving. It's a truth that needs speaking. The world will continue to tell you that you're too sensitive. Let them. They're not describing your weakness. They're confessing their fear. Because they know, on some level, that you see through them. That you feel past their facades. That you know what they're hiding. Every time someone tells you you're overthinking, they're really saying, "Stop thinking so accurately." Every time someone says you're too sensitive, they're really saying, "Stop sensing what I'm hiding." Every time someone insists you're imagining things, they're really saying, "Stop seeing what I don't want to acknowledge." This is your power, not the ability to see everything, but the courage to trust what you see. Not the capacity to feel everything, but the wisdom to honor what you feel. Not the gift of knowing everything, but the strength to stand in what you know. You're not sensitive, you're perceptive. And yes, it scares them. It should. Because perceptive people who trust their perception change the world. They refuse to participate in collective delusions. They won't pretend not to see dysfunction. They can't be recruited into comfortable lies. They become whistleblowers who expose corruption. They become artists who reveal hidden truths. They become healers who see past symptoms to causes. They become leaders who navigate by reality rather than by politics. They become friends who offer genuine understanding rather than comfortable platitudes. Your perception is needed now more than ever. In a world drowning in false narratives, manipulated realities, and collective gaslighting, those who can see clearly are essential. Your ability to perceive through the fog of deception isn't just a personal gift. It's a social necessity. If this truth resonates with you, if you're ready to stop apologizing for your perception and start honoring it, subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who's been told they're too sensitive. Comment below with your experience of being gaslit for seeing clearly. Because the revolution doesn't start with fighting the system. It starts with trusting your perception of it. It starts with refusing to doubt what you know. It starts with you, right now, deciding that your sensitivity was never the problem. They were just scared of how much you could see, and they should be. Because once you trust your perception, once you stand firm in your knowing, once you refuse to participate in collective blindness, you become unstoppable. You become a force of clarity in a world of confusion. You become a beacon of truth in an ocean of lies. This is your invitation to stop dimming your perception to make others comfortable, to stop doubting your instincts to keep the peace, to stop apologizing for seeing what others pretend not to see. Your perception is your power. Own it. Trust it. Use it. The world needs more people who can see clearly, feel deeply, and know truly. The world needs you, exactly as you are, with all your inconvenient perception and uncomfortable clarity. You're not too sensitive. You're perfectly calibrated for truth, and that's exactly what scares them.